18. Alright, how's it going, everybody? This is Carpo, and I was going to read this paper that I wrote, and I actually have my voice recorder here, and I've been debating how to do this. I want to start making videos where I have audio recordings and then I can add pictures, but it's actually easier for me to talk to the camera, believe it or not. So I was a bit I was bothered because I wrote this whole paper. I spent the last several hours writing this paper, and then something happened and it got lost. I could not find it anywhere. In the long run, I checked a random folder and ended up finding it there. I don't know how it got there, but it was just good luck that brought me back to it. And I'm glad that it's not permanently gone, because I learned long ago, don't lose your files. But I have a lot of various writings that I've been doing lately, that little bits and pieces, and I'm still trying to put together a few things. But I'd like to read this one. I was going to do it as a recording, but I figured doing it to the, straight to the camera would probably be a better option, because a lot of people will probably relate to this, and so my intention here is to kind of open up, let people know, I guess, that if you're the kind of person who, I don't know, an eccentric artist type person, that you're not alone, and I guess makes more sense to just read the paper that I wrote than to try to explain it. It's a little bit long, so hopefully I'll be able to cover it all. It's not too long, but... The stubborn, intelligent, introverted, artistic thinking, irresponsible human. Irresponsible being used loosely here. It is meant to define not responding to what society tells us is important, and going against the ideals of what we're told by others. I don't play by the rules set forth, so I've always felt like an outcast. If we do not follow the directions set out for us by our ancestors, we are banished from the tribe. The philosophers have always been pushed to the outskirts while alive, then revered in hindsight. When will we embrace the thinker in his own time? Celebrity culture gives us our heroes, yet we still celebrate the artists, thinkers, and inventors who have brought us so much joy, and so many things to ease our burdens. It takes time for society to reflect on what matters, as we are not always quick to make the best decisions about who to revere. Our heroes are a reflection of our society, but also of the ignorance about what kind of person is valuable to a society. How much have some celebrities contributed to our society? What are those who are merely famous for being famous? Why do so many people celebrate them? Often it seems to come down to the values, and we value wealth, something that never ceases to amaze me. A person who is looked up to merely for having a lot of stuff, instead of doing anything of value for the society they live in. We are worshipping the banks, not the ideals or contributions. That said, there are some wonderful philanthropists and charities out there, but they are still only good for one thing: money. No amount of money can buy creativity or philosophy, only time. Yet still we fail to value what many of the best thinkers contribute. Some things cannot be bought, only worked for over many years. Instead of gaining our own wisdom, we choose to believe the wisdom of others. When the heroes are of good character, this can be a good thing. But if the person is merely spewing ignorance, it can be damaging. People act on what others say, so we are better off listening to the voices of reason, but they are faint. In today's political atmosphere, we can see clearly how propaganda and bias can tear at the fabric of civility. It's all subjective, of course, but I think we can all agree that art and music are crucial to the well-being of any society through history. But what do we say when our children tell us they want to be artists, inventors, or God forbid they want to be a rock star? We tell them all about starving artists and how hard it is to make a living, or how slim the chances are that they will end up famous, all the while reflecting on our own ideas about success onto our kids. It's not our fault that every parent wants their child to be happy and succeed. But perhaps we should rethink what we value instead of leaving it all up to the other guys to decide for us. The thing is, for those kinds of children, it will never be about making money in the long run. So we may just be delaying the time it takes for them to find themselves. I'm writing this to help others who may have similar traits to my own, to embrace them and to realize that everyone is wired differently. We are all capable of learning new things, but some are better suited for certain behaviors and mental processes. Just like not everyone is a genius, not everyone is outgoing or social, and not everyone deals with information the same way. Some of us reserve our energy and use it differently, but we're scolded for it most of our lives. about it because we didn't get something done we were supposed to do, or we didn't want to do our homework but always passed the tests. A personal problem of mine when I was in school. Or even because we choose to take some time before answering a question until we have all the facts. We wanted kids that paid attention, so the creative types and the philosophers were marginalized in the society, just as they always have been. We celebrate creativity and love the arts, but seem blind to the fact that in order to think that way, one must have a different process than one who loves math. Though we all use the same brains, they are wired differently. I do not blame the parents, and surely not my own. We all do our best. I raised a millennial who is now 23, and I have 2 other children who are 6 and 9. We try to teach them to be themselves and embrace what they love, but also realize that can backfire if kids are not given structure. We have to share what we know on all fronts and be honest about it. Nobody is perfect, and we cannot always predict what a child will grow to and want to do with their lives. Our society tends to overlook how different our brains are wired, but we are coming around. Neuroscience is now showing that there are differences in the way people process information and respond to their environment. Edit. For example, research has shown that on average, conservatives and liberals actually think differently. Conservatives tend to be less open to change, but are more efficient in keeping things in order. Liberal-minded people may be more open to new things, or what we call novelty, but often lack the insight and organization to see that things are the way they are for a reason. And it's not always in need of a change, but between the two, we've always found balance. Not always. There's a lot of arguments in politics. Also, introverted people have more sensitivity to dopamine than those generally extroverted, and they can be drained by large crowds and need quiet time alone to recharge. The latter, however, gains energy from crowds and interactions. Knowing these things can help us better conserve our energy. Also, introverted people process information differently and need more time to process what they learn before we can discuss it. These small differences are actually huge in the perspective of conversation, and knowing this can help us better understand one another. But as to the creative-minded person, he or she may feel that they have to conform or be left behind, so they reluctantly take a job that they hate and dream about the passions for their whole life without giving themselves an opportunity to do so, out of fear of guilt or failure. Excuse me. So here's a list of a few scenarios and descriptions that I feel are suited to the artist, the writer, the philosopher, the inventor, and the craftsman, among others. The introverts of our society. If you resonate with any of these descriptions, you may well be a person who need to hear this to embrace who you really are. You're not alone. Introversion is merely a trait, but varies by each person. You can be outgoing and still need your own time. The key is to find a balance between the two. So this is what I'm hoping to help others do as well. The following are a few things I've noticed in myself and have heard others say as well, so see if any of them relate to your life. And so I'm going to list 15 things that I've found traits within myself or those like me. Number 1. You find yourself taking longer to make a decision than others around you. It makes you feel indecisive, and though you want to take charge and know what you want, you really have a hard time deciding on anything. You tend to go with the flow on decisions and rarely feel the need to be in charge, unless you can clearly see that it is a bad decision being made. But if you're a man, you probably still want to drive. Kind of a joke. Somewhat. You feel irresponsible. Number 2, you feel irresponsible in all of the ways that we are told to be responsible, and your paperwork is a mess. You have drawers and cabinets full of stuff. You know where everything is, and it's an organized chaos, but you still feel like you wish your surroundings were more orderly. Looking closer, you find you have a purpose for everything. And your hobbies make up most of your possessions. Everything has a purpose. You just haven't used them in a while. Number 3, you consider yourself a friendly person. But when you go to parties or events, you prefer to kind of hang out alone or with 1 or 2 people and hold deep conversations rather than meeting new people. You cannot stand small talk, but can cater to it when you must. You learn that though you enjoy people, there are limits and you need time alone to recharge after too much stimulation. Find a place you can call your own to get away from the chaos. You will always know when you're overstimulated. Number 4. You find your mind wandering when you're in a conversation and tend to miss parts of what people are telling you. Your intention is good, but your mind will not cooperate. You have the strangest thoughts about any subject, and they tend to meld into speculation and scenarios in your head. You are always on, brain always thinking. You may miss some things because of this. Number 5. When you are focused, it is on your art or passion. And when you're deep in the zone, you don't want to be bothered. You find it necessary to have a space you can call your own to go and do your projects and don't like to be interrupted. When you're in that place, you feel at your best. Time flies by. You may also dislike answering your phone or talking in person, unless prepared for it. You want to talk in your terms on your own time. I will rarely answer the phone, even if it's someone I know well. It drives people nuts, but it's how I roll, and people accept it or they don't. Breaking away from a project to answer the door or a call is painful at times. Number 6. You feel like you're irresponsible because you despise doing paperwork and dealing with managing others, or because you feel that others tend to not only hinder your efforts, but you want to be a team player but know you're better off doing it by yourself. When you work hard and do your best, but cannot stand menial or boring work for too long without losing your mind. You may find it hard to fit in because of this, and it can make work difficult unless you work alone. You can be a team player if needed, but prefer to do it alone. Number 7. You find small talk painfully boring, so you avoid talking to too many people when you go out, unless you get the sense that they're on the same page, because you quickly learn that all the crazy people seem to gravitate towards you and tell you things that have no relevance. Headphones are sometimes essential, whether they have music playing or not. But then again, you feel guilty because you consider yourself a social person. You do like people, just not always talking to them, unless it's on your terms. Number 8. You carefully consider everything you learn before running out and telling the world about it. But only because when you were younger, you did run out and tell everyone about everything you learned, whether or not it turned out to be true, or things that you no longer believe. The sky was not falling after all, so you learned caution. When you learn something new, you get very excited and love to inform others in hopes that they enjoy it too, after you have carefully researched it as much as possible. However, much of the time, they do not care. You still keep trying, though. Number 9. When you are quiet, you're really quiet. When you get to talking, though, nobody can shut you up. You have digested the information you're discussing carefully, so you tend to have a wide angle on the subject that you go over people's heads, giving details that are a bit too deep. Simple discussions always lead to deep thoughts, because that's what you value talking about. Once again, much of the times, others do not care, but you keep trying. You can't help it. Number 10. No matter how well you are doing, you're far too self-analytical and tend never to be satisfied by the material, wealth, nor anything else in the real world. You know you're destined for some purpose, but then you get older and realize that's how others feel too. And really it's part of being human, not just us as individuals. That voice is what drives us to innovate and fulfill our dreams. If we listen to it. Always searching, we must be, or we'll never be satisfied. Many become drifters or travelers because the material world does not interest them. Number 11. You have a low tolerance for bullshit. And call it out everywhere you see it. Sometimes you're accused of being combative or argumentative because you disagree with somebody else's point of view. Even when you are right, and when you do have evidence to support your claims, others refuse to look at it, for it may conflict with what they want to believe is true. Unfortunately, even though your intention is merely to get to the bottom of the truth, others take it personally, as their ideas define them. You cannot stand it when people believe without research or evidence, because you know how fallible our beliefs are, and how easily we are deluded as humans. Number 12. You're open-minded to a fault, and when you discover something new, you dive in until you understand every component of it. Nothing is off limits. You have no dogma holding you back from studying whatever comes your way or interests you. Once you're done with the subject, though, you toss it aside like an old book you read and grab another one. This is a lifelong process that defines many of us and drives our families insane. But it's worth it. Once a subject is old to you, and when people bring it up, you feign interest but really want to get into the new things. Aliens? Meh. So last decade. Let's talk about psychological conditioning in the modern era. Number 13. Your fashion statement is something between a 70s hobo or a modern businessman. In other words, any extreme you could imagine. You don't really care much, but goodwill is fine. But you feel the need to stand out and be eccentric to an extent, but also feel a bit silly knowing how the ego works. and questioning your own image. Perhaps you tried to be plain for a while, but it just wasn't your thing. You like to stand out and have no problem expressing yourself even if you feel silly at the same time. You just want people to know you're not another slave to the system, even though in reality, you know we all are. Number 14. You refuse to put beliefs in a box. Your ideas flow where life takes you, and though you see the divinity in nature, you cannot explain it at all. You have learned to think in metaphors, which is the way we can best understand life, but that means we can rarely express it to others, as language is so limited. Once you've seen a bigger picture, you can't go back to your old frame of mind. You know there's a greater meaning and purpose to life, but would dare not try to confine it to a belief system of any kind. However, you are fascinated with the roots and details of all religions and have no problem learning about them. You see they have value to many, so you learn to respect them over time, even though you shake your head at some of the practices and find them quite silly. Now, and number 15, finally, the last one. As you get older, you start seeing that you're different from others. As a teenager, you might feel alone or misunderstood. As you get even older and into your 20s, you might start to embrace your differences and use it to your advantage. Running a business or starting a project. Then, in your 30s, you may start to wonder why you're not like others. As an artist or inventor, etc., you may be struggling to pay bills and frustrated that you cannot work a regular 9-to-5 job and be happy. It makes you feel guilty. You know that you're destined for better things. You try everything to be independent and work for yourself, but being creative, you're horrible with running a business. Then a time comes in your life where you look back and see the value of both integration and separation. You see that there must be a happy medium, and there should never be an extreme. We should always seek equilibrium and homeostasis. You find that even if money does not matter to you, it matters if you want to raise a family. You develop a cognitive dissonance regarding your purpose in life, knowing you have to fulfill the role both as a spouse or parent, as well as the role to fulfill your own dreams in life. It's okay to feel selfish at times because it shows where we need to adjust our time. And that's just the short list. You may also be a person who cares deeply about all people, but comes across as abrasive to those closest to you because you find expressing your emotions cumbersome and corny. You may also find yourself shutting out toxic people in your life because it takes too much energy to maintain those relationships. And you may find yourself sharing your thoughts with others so they can see that they are not alone, and letting your guard down because there's little in life worth hiding from. We can create a future where creativity is nurtured instead of being pushed to the margins of society, and we can start with our own lives by harnessing our passions and sharing them with the world. This begins with knowing we are not alone, which is also saying that we share our passions with many others, and in today's world we are closer to one another than ever. And we can use that to better understand one another. A man can dream after all. That's what I do. So I hope you enjoyed it. That's what I've got. I'm going to eventually post that as a permanent, video. I might not. I have another one I was going to read here, but I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet. As usual, thanks for watching. For my Patreon people, I always say if you send me a message through Patreon, you can get a hard copy of any of the writings that I read here. I want to share them as much as possible, but if you have any questions, leave a comment in the comment section. Information is in the description. And have a wonderful day. And if you are a weirdo like me, then, hopefully this didn't come across as arrogant. A couple parts, it's the first time I've read it, as I didn't proofread it really before I just wrote it and read it. A couple parts that sounded like, the whole part about being destined for greater things. That's not as it comes across, really. It's just that you feel like not greater things than anyone else. Greater things than you have already accomplished is what I mean. That you feel like you have a place and a purpose that you want to serve. You want to do something greater. That you say, how do I utilize this energy I have that I want to help and I want to do things? And I've been fighting that battle for, a couple decades now, but I'm finally realizing that my purpose here is being fulfilled over time. To make these videos and eventually start writing books, and I'd like to share what I've learned with others, because that's really all I have to contribute. That's what I like to do. It's what I love, and they say find your passion and roll with it. The thing is, I just hadn't found my passion because I didn't take it seriously. I didn't take writing seriously, because I should have included writers within this. Just with the artists and philosophers, I may have mentioned it, but you know, everybody loves to read books, but, you know, becoming an author is, you know, hard to get paid, that kind of thing. And that's why people who do odd things and have artistic minds aren't generally money-minded, and maybe that's why there's no money in it. You know, you could talk about the art scene in New York. That's not what I consider art. That's not, you know, the $1 million paintings and whatnot. That's not creativity in the sense of what I'm talking about. Anybody knows you can find a better painting just off the street, you know, but we tend to value what others value. But when we look back in history and say, what are the most important things, they are the creations, the beautiful paintings, the amazing statues, the masterpieces of music, and the great philosophers, which brought us these ideas. Stupid things like I think, therefore I am, you know, that take years to even understand really what the simplicity of some of these things, but showing man's creativity through word, through invention, you know, it's something awesome, and we all want to be part of it, you know, or a lot of us want to be part of it. So be patient. You'll find your way, you know. It just takes time, and you always got to be vigilant and working towards it. So talk to y'all later. Have a good